Hello, Craig here, and welcome to vlog 3 of season 3 of the tiny tropical garden. This week is the first time this year I find an opportunity to start planting in the garden, as well as dog sitting this cutie. But first, I have an admission. I always forget to water my houseplants. And this Streptocarpus is one of the first of my houseplants to curl up and remind me that it needs a drink. I had the Streptocarpus sat by the stream last summer and it looked great and just kept flowering. And I was planning to do some leaf cutting, but I really need to get it looking happier before I can even attempt that. I'll leave it sat in a bit of water in the sink to soak it up for a while, and we'll pop back to see how it's doing later. Hopefully, it will forgive me. Another plant of mine that is struggling at the moment is this Hebe, which this dog keeps taking a liking to. Don't be fooled by that cute face. Every time she comes to this garden, she finds this plant just when it's recovering from the time before, and she will drop her ball into the middle of it and then put her face down until it opens up wide like a bird's nest. I can't remember exactly what species this Hebe is, but I love it, and everyone that comes to the garden loves its texture and structure, including this dog. So I'm going to have a go at doing some cuttings, and then maybe I can plant some in the dog's own garden. But that's a task for another week. On with this week's tasks. I really do love this FARGESIA RUFA bamboo. It's densely leaved and it sways around when the wind blows, but it flops, and my garden is just too small to have floppy plants, so it's going to have to be lifted, and I'm going to donate it to my sister, who's just starting her own tiny tropical garden. And I'm really starting to learn that this is what gardening's all about. Just buy the things you like, plant what you think is going to work, and in time you'll learn what does and what doesn't, and your garden's going to evolve. And it will be all the better for it, and your knowledge will grow. And I promise you, when you start sharing the plants that don't work or that you don't like in your garden, you'll be surprised how many more plants come in your direction. Gardeners have a great community, and it is really all about sharing. Okay, so I've had a look at the root ball, and I think it's going to be relatively easy to get out of the ground. It's only been in for 2 years, so its roots haven't got down that far. And FARGESIA is a clumping bamboo, which means it doesn't send runners off to the other side of the garden. You can see here, the root ball is relatively easy just to lift up out, but I will need 2 hands to do this, so bear with me and I'll show you it when I've got it out of the ground. Ta-da! So you can see here there's tiny new shoots coming up, but they come up right next to the main plant, which is why this is called a clumping bamboo. And I'd recommend this is the only sort you put into the ground, because running bamboos can be extremely high maintenance, and you can really annoy your neighbours if a bit of your bamboo pops up in their garden. And it's a great evergreen plant, and it gives you that structure and movement all year round, so hopefully my sister will love this as much as I did. But you can see how much it's opened up the space around that tree fern and GARRYA. So, with the bamboo out of the way, you can see that the GARRYA, or silk tassel tree, and the tree fern have a lot more space, but they're still growing into one another, so I think I'm going to need to get my secateurs out and get pruning. I'd like this silk tassel tree to get as tall as the fence, and last year it put out some long vertical shoots, so I'm going to encourage these to grow, and I'll probably snip out the top to get it to bush out at the top of the fence height. And I'll prune away this lower growth to give the tree fern some space. At this point, I got overexcited. I was just happy to be gardening again. So not only did I prune the GARRYA to get rid of all that lower growth, I also removed the tree fern. This is actually an idea that I've been toying with for a long time. Tree ferns are lovely, but the fronds get enormous, and unless it's a tall tree fern that's growing up and above everything else, the fronds just grow into every plant all around it. And this was just a stump when I put it in. When people say tree ferns don't have roots, they're wrong. Look, in 1 year, or less than a year, it's put out all of these fibrous roots. So I was lucky to remove it now because I think it would have been a lot more difficult if I'd left it in a bit longer. And in its place, I finally planted my Schefflera taiwaniana. I bought this plant for my birthday a couple of years ago, I think. And I really love Scheffleras. They're shade tolerant, they look extremely tropical, and they can grow to form large shrubs. But I didn't want to put it in the ground because I wanted to take it with us if we moved. But I've decided I'm not going to see it reach its potential unless it's in the ground. And if I desperately want to move it, I can have a go at digging it up then. But we're not moving anytime soon. I love the leaves, so it's staying. And this Canary Island foxglove, which you might remember flowers in spring and summer with orange flower spikes that look a lot like foxgloves. It's just grown too floppy and it's got too much foliage, and I think this is probably a result of high nitrogen in the soil. So it's all gone into foliage and it's growing too quickly. But you can see there are shoots at the base of the plant. So I'm going to give this plant a hard chop to encourage it to reshoot from these new lower growth points. And as I was doing it, I decided to lift the plant and move it to a better spot because it's an evergreen shrub and it just takes up too much space in the part of the bed that I had it. And on lifting it, you can see how many more growth points there are, which is great. I've chopped it right back to these points and I've moved it to the middle island bed, just behind the stream there. And you should get the bright orange flowers underneath the shade leafy cover of summer. Time will tell how this works out, but I'm happy with where it is. You can see I've also used bamboo canes, just to push those evergreen shrubs flat against that wall. I should really be tying them into wires, but I haven't installed any wires into the wall yet. And just look how muddy that tiny bit of grass is, just after me doing a little bit of gardening. This is why I really want the weather, just to dry out a bit, because the more gardening I do, the more I'm damaging the grass. And while I was at it with the secateurs, I trimmed off those old leaves from the hellebore I showed you last week. And it's just a really good way to display the flowers much better and then make space for this year's leaves to come out to make sure you always have fresh green foliage. Something else I learned was that last year I planted my fuchsia in the wrong spot because it got completely covered by other plants. So I've taken the opportunity to move it to the new border, and hopefully this golden leaf fuchsia will look good against this variegated grass and the golden spots on my Farfugium. Fingers crossed it works out this year. Oh, and I need to give a shout out to Overgrown Botanicals on YouTube because they commented last week and told me what this plant was. I'd completely forgotten the name, so it's really helpful. Thank you so much for commenting and for watching the videos. It's the best way to support the channel. Right, I think that's all of the work done in the garden this week. Time to pop back and see how that Streptocarpus is doing. After a few hours sat in the water in the sink, you can see how much the leaves have perked up. It never stops to surprise me, the difference in plants after a drink. They can go from looking on the brink of death to a nice healthy plant, albeit with some damage to the leaves. My bad. I'll try not to forget to water it next time. But that Hebe that the dog took a liking to isn't showing such good signs of recovery. So next week, I'll take loads of cuttings. More for me, some for the dog, and plenty to share. So that's this week's update. Thank you so much for watching, and if you're looking for more ideas and inspiration, don't forget to check out the Tiny Tropical Garden website. I've set up an affiliate store with links to where you can buy seeds and plants. And the best way you can support this channel is to watch the videos and hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.